Hi, everybody. It's Jay, and I am back in the booth with you again for another sneak peek video preview here on Say with Jay. This week, our new audiobook release is Dreaming of His Snowed-In Kiss. It's the fourth book in Jessie Gussman's Cowboy Mountain Christmas Sweet Romance series. And like all of the books in this series, it's Christmas-themed, you could say. And for one, I'm certainly excited to be getting closer to the actual Christmas season. Now, of course, before we get there, we've got to get through fall. And I had two wonderful signs today that it is on its way. The first, look at this beauty. My daughter-in-law decided to make a pumpkin pie completely from scratch. Literally. She and my son got up Saturday morning and went and got a pumpkin from a local pumpkin patch, one of the first sweet pumpkins they had harvested. She made the dough from scratch. She even whipped the whipped cream herself that went on top of it. Now, I had a piece of it not long before I came in here, and I'm sorry, there was no chance of it lasting long enough for me to get a picture of it to show you guys. And while I apologize, I'm not in the slightest bit sorry. Of course, the second sign is Labor Day. Now, most of you might be seeing this on Tuesday, but I'm recording this on Monday, Labor Day. And you might or might not know, Labor Day has been a federal holiday since 1894 when Grover Cleveland signed it into law. And it was originally to honor and celebrate the men and women in the American workforce and for all of the things they do. And of course, we still recognize those contributions today, as we well should. But it's also become a harbinger of the change of seasons. It's become, the mark of the end of summer. That last hurrah to go to the pool or go to the beach or have that last big cookout. It's also become a time when you can get a great deal on a sofa or a grill or appliances of every shape. Me, myself, as I've gotten older, maybe because I have a 30-year-old refrigerator that just will not die and therefore I'm not in need of an appliance, I find myself thinking more and more about the original philosophical intent of the Labor Day holiday, to rest. It's kind of a secular Sabbath of sorts. Obviously, Labor Day isn't a religious holiday at all, but I find myself thinking about how often the Bible calls upon us to rest. Like in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." The Bible is filled with verses like that, calls to rest, calls for a quiet moment, calls to be still and know that I am God. Perfect times to hear God's voice. The famous French mathematician Blaise Pascal, who you may or may not know, back in the 1600s was also a philosopher and a Catholic theologian. But he said, when we don't take these quiet times, when we don't have these quiet moments, when we don't stop the daily mindless grind to consider our heavenly future, we make nothing an eternity and make eternity nothing. I just love that quote. So I would encourage you not to say you'll find time. Make time to have that quiet moment every day at some point so that you can hear God's voice in your life. Your day will be so much better off for it. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about Dreaming of His Snowed-In Kiss. Dreaming of His Snowed-In Kiss is the story of West Barclay. We've met the Barclay kids in the previous books in this series, and as you may remember, the 6 Barclay children were orphaned when their parents died in a car accident and were ultimately all adopted by Race and Penny Steiner. But before that happened, all 6 children spent time in the foster care system, often separated from each other. West had a much rougher time than his siblings, and he still carries those emotional scars with him in his adult life. He's gruff, he's surly, he's grumpy, and his nemesis, you might say, is Poppy Kile. She, the polar opposite of West, is almost unnaturally happy and positive, and behind that genuine personality hides a monumental tragedy in her early life that she's had to overcome. Now, when Poppy is delivering a church dinner to West's isolated ranch, and when she is stranded there by the snowstorm of the century, and when they find out they're likely to be stranded there for a week or more, can these two polar opposites overcome their differences and become friends and possibly find romance? Of course, you'll have to come back this Friday to find the answer out. But for now, here is a sample of Dreaming of His Snowed-In Kiss, here on Say with Jay.
I guess I just told you something that not too many people know about me, but that doesn't mean that you're required in any way to do the same. I don't want you to feel like you have to. And no, I won't be mad. It's your right to either tell me or not.
I want to trust you, and just for the last few minutes, I've been biting my tongue over trying to say anything. I've never had to do that before.
No pressure. He truly meant that. As much as he was even more curious now than he had been, he definitely didn't want to hurt her. If it's going to upset you, don't worry about it.
It probably will, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Her voice was firm.
You might even have heard about it. Some people have. It's one of the stories that are so unbelievably bad it made the national news.
His stomach balled up. Maybe he shouldn't have pushed. He had a feeling he didn't want to hear what she was going to say.
I grew up on a farm, too. I was the 3rd child out of 11 children. When this happened, my mom was pregnant with Hazel. She and my dad and I were doing the milking that morning.
She let out a hard breath.
We all took turns. It was just my morning.
She lifted a hand, as though that thought needed extra emphasis, that it was randomly her turn to milk.
That's just the way it was. It was winter, and we had a fire in the wood stove in the kitchen. I know, people don't have wood stoves anymore. But when you have 11 kids, you have more help than you do money, and wood was free. We actually heated our whole house with it. And in northern Missouri where we lived, it got a lot colder than it does here.
He got the feeling she was giving him extra details just because she was trying to build herself up to saying whatever it was she needed to say. He let her talk. The real temptation was to close the distance between them and put an arm around her. It probably wouldn't make things easier for her, but it would make him feel better. He'd been wanting to do it for a while.
Dad had fixed the fire, got it going in the wood stove. My sisters would be getting up in an hour or so to make breakfast, which would be on the table when we were done milking the cows. My brothers would be getting up about the same time to come out and feed, but it didn't take quite as long to feed as it did to milk. We always had everything out and ready for morning the night before.
She laughed a little.
We all like to sleep in as long as possible, so we did as much the night before as we could. I suppose that's the way all farmers work.
He had to laugh a little at that. I don't milk cows, but I can relate. It's almost always easier to do the work the night before than it is to get up early the next day.
Exactly. And we already got up at 4.
Wow.
Anyway, I guess it was a flue fire. That's what the fire inspector said anyway.
A sick feeling of premonition crawled through his middle.
I don't know what it was that made Mom look out the door while we were milking. Usually, we kept everything closed up tight to keep the warmth in. Maybe it was a Mom's intuition. I don't know. Anyway, when she looked out, the house was fully engulfed.
West couldn't help it. He gasped. The statement she'd made ran through his mind. She was the third of 11.
Hi, this is Jay, and thanks for listening. If you're ready for another great audiobook, here's one we think you might like. Or check out the playlist with all our latest releases. Don't forget to subscribe to Say with Jay, give this video a thumbs up, and tell us what you liked in the comments.